When we're doing this, it's.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. As directed by Manitoba Health, we are requesting people with close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness such as coughing or sneezing. If you are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we are requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. And first, I'd like to make the following statement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Lynn Nesbitt, and I'll be chairing our meeting today. Other members of the panel are to my left, Brent McIntyre, and to his left, Cynthia Stevens. Our secretary today is Belen Rojo, and our assessor is Jeremy Pohl. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that you will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to the assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
Please state your full name.
Jeremy Wright.
And you affirm the evidence about presents the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
And you affirm the evidence about presents the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. Okay, our first property on the docket today is 3965 Portage Avenue, Unit 10. Mr. Pohl, when you're ready to start.
Business ID number is 50692. The total annual rental value is $277,260. The total area of the premises is 17,111 square feet, and the total ARV rate that we applied was $16.20. Below that is the breakdown of how we get to that. The base ARV is $237,843. The model rent was $13.90, and then occupancy costs are right at that, and the total $39,424 with summating both base rent and annual occupancy costs gives us our total ARV of $277,260. On the following page, the comparables comparable sheet. The comparables are of big box stores. We do not have, and I'll just go through the argument.
Sure.
Full service vehicle dealerships are primarily or virtually all owner occupied. There are no rents in the marketplace. We cannot use any of the book rents that are in place. They just don't exist. So what we have to do is go out into the marketplace and find the most reasonable rent that we can substitute here for this purpose. So if this ownership group or any of the car dealerships were to go out into the marketplace, they'd have to find a similar property of similar economic utility in a retail area, similar size, and do the subject property basically being a steel frame building, slab on grade construction, a little bit build up for the showroom and for the office areas. You would look out into the marketplace to see a building of similar utility, and that would be your big box stores, typically minimally developed on the inside. We know that if the ownership groups were to go out into the marketplace and look for a building, they'd have to bear that same rent that other tenants are paying. So when we go through comparables 1 through 27, this is the marketplace for BCD stores that we have, or BCD dealerships that we have from that big box type store location in retail markets. So as we go through here, we have 27 comparables. The average is $18.86 a square foot. The weighted average is $18.05 a square foot, and the median is $18.29 a square foot. So that's a very tight analysis. It's a good analysis. That is the rent that we were using to justify the $13.90 that we have for our model rent. On the last page, page 3, is the realty decision for this property. There is both a joint, I guess we would say, dual appeals filed by the Assessment Taxation Department. So the decision was based on the Assessment and Taxation Department's net operating income, less the infrastructure costs, and a capitalization of 8%. So when I'm reviewing this property, I'm looking at the marketplace hovering around $18, and we see $13.90 rent on it. I think it's more than reasonable bid on the market. So at this point, I think $13.90 rent is achievable.
And that concludes your presentation. Thank you. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I do, and just up front, I'm assuming for the most part, the presentations on all of these properties today will be the same. Okay, the rental comparables will be the same, etc. So if we do a thorough analysis of things up front, we can carry that forward through the other properties. Is that fair? Okay, great. Also, in that same vein, just looking at the realty decision that came out, I know there's obviously some variation in these as we get away from Point West, but is it fair to say that in 2020, the city has essentially blanket appealed all of the automobile dealership decisions?
I don't want to say blanket is in every single one, but the majority of them is.
Okay.
I haven't gone through the actual numbers.
That's fair. So for the ones that we're looking at today, they would all have been appealed by the city. Okay. With the exception of the 810 region type.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I thought we were the top.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Looking at the city's valuation approach here. So is it, it's my understanding that in coming up with the applicable rental rates for the various dealerships, the city's approach has been to look at similar structures, which in the rental comparables that are provided here are all big box retail stores. Is that correct? So that's being considered to be the closest single comparison to the auto dealership. Right. When you look at an automobile dealership, is the entire building a sales floor as essentially these big box stores are, or is it demised into different portions?
It would be demised.
So you would have.
Excuse me, Mr. Cole, could you speak up just a little?
Yes, there would be dividing walls in between the service areas.
So you would have. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Between office, showroom,
right,
service.
So you would, your typical setup would be you would have showroom, showroom and office at the front portion of the structure, and then a larger portion of vehicle service at the rear of the structure, with occasionally some side bays for quick service, etc. Right. So when we look at the comparables in that manner, when it's straight retail, does that capture what we're looking at in terms of an automobile dealership?
No, they're not car dealerships. They're not going to have the exact same building design. You could argue that my argument is for a retail big box store, it's very minimal. Basically, a slab on grade, bit of office, bit of mezz, usually for your employees, luxury, that kind of thing. Bit of storage in the back. Typically, everything that you have that you're selling is out on the floor. You don't have a lot sitting that I can't sell in the back, right?
Right.
So, but that type of building is minimal as far as development on the interior. So if you're getting these type of rents, we know that if you were to develop that property more, so that it would cost more to develop that property. So you would actually generate a higher rent if you have these in a rentable location. So when we're taking a big box store, what we're saying is this is the basic bare rent that you would be able to get. If we were to go to the marketplace and these were to actually rent it higher, these are the rents that I can bring in and establish a baseline.
Right. I see the argument.
If you're going to develop the property more, it's going to have to try to tell it back.
As mentioned, the majority of the structure for these big box stores is selling floor with a minimal loading area and minimal storage facilities at the back, right? So the majority of the building itself is devoted to selling the products that are in those locations. Okay. Just as the comparables is really what we're looking at. I just want to make sure that my list here coincides with yours. So in going through these rental comparables, so the top of the page, the first 27 comparables are the big box leases, and then the bottom 4 are automotive related, correct?
Right.
Okay.
But to be clear, we're relying on 1 through 27. I'm just bringing in comparables 28 through 31 as a test.
Okay. So in going through comparables 1 through 27, they're broken down essentially into the different power centers when I look at them. Is that fair? The Polo Park area, Caniston and McGillivray, Regent Avenue area around Regent and Lagimoje, and then the IKEA Sterling Lion developments.
Yes,
that's fair to say?
Yeah, typically in a retail, no higher density.
Okay, so these are power centers that are developed as straight retail, big box, typically lots of parking out front. They are either adjoined or immediately adjacent to other retail locations. That's correct. They're built that way to drive overall business as retail. You don't have a big box store locating off by itself over here and then a big box store locating somewhere else. They're built as an agglomeration. Is that correct?
Generally speaking, yes.
And that would be a large driver of the rental rates that the developer is able to achieve in those locations by bringing those various retailers together in one location where shoppers can do all of their shopping, correct?
Yes, there's an argument for that.
Okay. Looking at the comparables themselves, I don't want to go through these necessarily one by one, but I did note down who some of the tenancies are here. So we'd be looking at Best Buy, Old Navy, Mark's Work Warehouse, Ashley Furniture, The Brick, Sport Check, Staples, Bed Bath Beyond, Michaels, Bouclair, etc. Correct? Those would be good examples of through the list. Okay. All right.
Complete list.
Okay, sure.
It's exactly what you're seeing. So, it's the same argument we were saying for a few seconds.
Right. Thank you. And so the comparison is being made straight retail to automotive dealerships. That's essentially the argument. Okay. Looking at the automotive comparables at the bottom of the page, and I gather you're not relying on these, so we won't put a lot of weight on this. 1284 Main, that's MPI location, which is dominantly office, with a lot of the basement space not actually reflected in that area, correct?
Yeah, there's some basement space in there, as well as a very large shop base. It's quite a big.
I've been in that one, yeah. So the large majority of it is office space, and I believe the basement is not actually reflected in this rental area, correct? Which would bring the rent down considerably.
I wouldn't say it's more of but as far as the vehicle service bay, it's quite a large section of the building. And then ended up in service attic.
As have I, yes. Yeah.
No, so you know.
Not recently, thankfully, but I have been there. Number two is a Boyd location. They're no longer operating there. That was all office space, correct? In that property, 3570 Portage
I
Avenue.
believe there was some contention with another tax agent that the majority of it was an office, but there was service space in there. But I believe there was 2 doors to get in. It was a smaller portion than an office.
Okay, so more of an office use there. 3680 Portage Avenue is listed here. In fact, I think I have this in one of my comparables as well. This is a used auto dealer, correct?
Yes.
Auto gallery, I believe.
Yes, it's an older full service dealership location.
Right. Okay.
The last rent we had on was 1250.
Right, as it shows here. So in this comparable here, it's listed as 7,200 square feet. To my knowledge, there's also a mezzanine area in that building, which is not encompassed in the 7,200 square feet. I don't have the actual number. I did pull the building characteristics, but I forgot to include it here. But I know that it was somewhat significant.
I'm going straight from the expense questionnaire that's been submitted by the property owner. I will review the mezzanine if it is there.
So
it's first time here.
Yeah, fair enough. Assuming it's there, that would drive the rental rate down from 1250. And the 2537 Pembina property, this is was the Subaru dealership, correct? Right. Okay, and have all the panel members heard details on this in the past? We need to go through it again. It was that was Jim Pattison Subaru, correct, that came into the market. They were looking to begin operations in Winnipeg, and they essentially acquired 2 locations, one of them being on Regent Avenue, the other being this 2537 Pembina. In order to do that, the owner of the property and the operator of Subaru drove a above market rental rate for a significant period of time. I think it was 5 years, correct? And at the same time as that lease deal was struck, they also struck a purchase, an option to purchase at, again, an above market rate at that same time, correct?
The option to purchase price was not above market. That's what their market was. Their option to lease at a higher rate, inclusive of that, was their option to purchase or walk away. The property owner didn't have the ability to walk away from the purchase. It was solely on the tenant, which was Subaru. They were always the tenant.
Right. And they did not walk
They
away.
didn't buy any of the goodwill because they were already with the franchise. So they had the option.
So they were essentially buying the franchise, not the.
No, they were the franchise. They were buying the real estate. They were always the franchise.
Jim Passon was not. No. You can't outright buy the brand operation. It's not permitted. It has to be transferred by Subaru, but you have to put yourself in line for it, which is what they did and how it's done going this route. When you enter a new market, you have to acquire the operations essentially, which is what they did.
I'd like to do a scenario with they indicated that what they paid for it was the value of the real estate.
Right.
So, if you're presenting anything else, that's your opinion. I can only go with the first-hand knowledge I have after investigating the two
Okay,
sales.
so we.
But having said that, we're doing the retail market, which is comparables 1 through 26.
Yes, I don't want to belabor this point either. Following purchase of the property, did they immediately move their franchise as quickly as they could over to the Waverly Automall? And is that operation that is 2537 down operating as an auto dealership now? No, it's not. It's vacant, I believe.
But having said that, when the purchase agreement was struck, I should say, that was done in 2010, 2011. So anything that would happen from the manufacturers telling their tenants or their franchisee that they're going to move their location and do something, that was years down the line that may not have been at that point in time known to the purchaser. So that would be a large assumption to make without investigating.
Well,
What I'm saying is after investigating these two sales, not once did they indicate that they were going to do that. So I think that
again, the method of being able to enter a market, tightly controlled market like Winnipeg, you're not going to. There's no green fields. You can't come in and say, well, we have this new area that we're going to build in. Is that fair to say? You can't go in and start a new dealership. Essentially, the areas are covered by the brands, right? In your west, south, east, etc. So and I'm. It's not a. Perhaps I'll deal with that aspect in my presentation rather than continue on this route. I'm just looking briefly here. So our many of the higher comps, looking at Sterling Lion Parkway by the looks of it, correct? So that would be immediately adjacent to the IKEA, correct?
Yes. Same development arm of that.
Okay, I think that's probably all of my questions for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions.
Okay, neither do I. Oh, no, I don't. They've been asked. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So our first property here is Unit 10, 3965 Portage Avenue. The first, I guess, 8 properties that we're dealing with here are all located in the Point West Auto Park. This is Unit 10, which is the Volvo Land Rover Jaguar dealership. Of note, Land Rover Jaguar is exiting this property. They are constructing, they're enforcing construction of a new location for themselves in the south of Winnipeg, and they will not be located in this unit once that development is complete. Volvo itself is a smaller brand overall in terms of the number of sales that they do. They do not have the volume necessarily to support a full dealership on their own, which is that being the reason that they are in a dealership shared with Land Rover and Jaguar at this point in time. Land Rover Jaguar are on the more luxurious end of the automobile brands, and as has been seen in the marketplace, those brands who do control where they operate out of are driving, or who's enabled to sell their vehicles. They are driving construction of new locations for themselves in areas that they figure are more suitable to driving better sales for their brands. So Volvo will be the sole occupant. It will be underutilized essentially in that they do not have the market share to fully support a property such as this, but they will be continuing forward. Moving on, let's look at my page number 1. It says property details. If you look at the chart that I have here, we've included a fair bit of information. Each of the properties today will be like this. Property was originally built in 2002. As an automobile dealership, it is zoned C3 with restrictions, which we will get into. And the overall site area is 3.9 acres. Now, that encompasses a significantly larger area than just what is devoted to the automobile dealership itself. So we are not able to determine the land to plan area ratio. It is on the small side and well below the typical 8-to-1 ratio that you look for automobile dealerships in today's day and age, and indeed in the past as well. If you look at my page number 7, there's an aerial of the property. You can see that fronting on Portage Avenue, there is another building. That is the Tim Hortons drive-through. The front, that area is fenced off from the dealership itself, and then there's a vacant section right on the corner there. So the actual size available to the dealership itself is well under the 3.9 acres, and indeed is too small for modern dealerships. So what you find here at this park, as well as many of the other locations, is that the land size that these dealerships have available to them is undersized in order to, and most importantly, have the product available for display and visual on the lot itself, as well as have space for serviced vehicles to be stored, as well as staff and clientele to park on the lot itself. So they need to, typically dealers need to acquire additional land, ideally nearby, on which to store product. So continuing on in our page number 1, we'll get to the zoning in a bit. the layout of the property is shown there for you, 15,000+ square feet of gross floor area. There is a significant mezz, which is included as it's developed as office space, and our total area is 17,111 square feet. As noted in the legal description, Point West Auto Park is a condominium corporation, and we will quickly delve into that when we get to that section here. I've also laid out the history of the property and appeals for both realty and business. If you look at this, you can see the trend in the history of appeals for the property, both in business and realty, up until 2018 realty, where we had a reduction that was not representative of market value, which we appealed to the municipal board. Subsequently, the same thing happened in 2020, also appealed to the municipal board. Going back to the 2016 realty, the decision was based that time at the board revision on a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot. Moving over to the business side, 2018 business was decided at the board of revision based on a rental rate of $11.75 per square foot. Moving forward, you have the photos of the property beginning on page 2, showroom, exteriors, office space, a warehouse at the corner, service area at the back, as you can see. Description is on page 4. I'm not going to run through that. It is there for you to see. The point with regard to condominium development at Point West is in regard to the infrastructure, the typical infrastructure components that any occupant in the city of Winnipeg has access to, that are in this case, maintained at the cost of the individual condominium owners who are a common ownership. But the Point West Auto Park was developed under an agreement with the city of Winnipeg, such that the Point West owners were responsible for the installing of the infrastructure, the ongoing maintenance of that infrastructure, so your annual costs, as well as the repair and replacement of that infrastructure on a long-term basis. So these are costs that the individual unit operations must bear that you wouldn't bear in a typical location. If you were located on Regent Avenue or Portage Avenue or McPhillips Street, your street lighting, you don't pay directly for that. You don't pay directly for the maintenance of the sewer system. You don't pay directly for maintenance of the sewer lines. You don't pay directly for the maintenance of and replacement of the street infrastructure. That's just part of the taxes that you pay. At Point West, you pay your taxes as well as maintaining those services themselves. So apples to apples, in a normal market situation, if you were a prospective tenant, you would be willing to pay less for a location where your costs were greater than you would for one that had normalized costs. So that would have an impact on rental rate in this location. The zoning for the property on page 6, this is again for all of the properties in Point West Auto Park. Property is zone C3 commercial. However, there is a zoning agreement for the property that has a significant number of ongoing use restrictions with regard to what can be conducted for business in the auto park. This is also registered on the condominium declaration for the condo corp. So it's registered on title, and it essentially restricts use in the park to automotive sales and repair. And I've got the actual quote from the condominium declaration there that shows you that. So within the auto park, you cannot make any other use of these facilities unless it's automotive sales, repair, lease, storage, display, etc. Unless it's a very tightly related thing. They do provide an insurance outlet in the base of their office building on the site, but that is the only other use made within the park, really the only other one allowed. So again, zoning, this is an additional restriction. You cannot take a Michael's, a Best Buy, any other retailer such as this and transfer it into any of these structures, any of these locations. Not that they would go there in the first place, but you can't do it because of the zoning. So that also limits your market specifically to automobile sales and service. The site is described on page 6 and shown on page 7. I think we're probably all familiar with the location of it, which is shown on page 8, but probably worth noting as well. As you look at the aerial on page 8, Point West is located on the very periphery of the city, just outside of the perimeter highway on the north side of Portage Avenue there by Assiniboia Downs. It has the MTS Iceplex, which was built in recent years just north of it, Assiniboia Downs Racetrack, and they're looking at trying to attract retailers to that adjacent site, but have been unsuccessful now. So it's essentially bounded by fields. There's no supportive infrastructure in this area to drive people to that location other than the auto park itself. Moving on to page number 9, the automotive industry. And I had some quick highlights here just to point out. So, as is happening with many retail market segments these days, automotive sales is undergoing a period of uncertainty and revision. The rise of online shopping has given consumers easier access to relevant information for comparison shopping, driving more competition for the consumer and lowering price margins, essentially, as consumers shop around. Online shopping has also led to automotive brands considering or choosing, as they have, to consolidate dealerships into what they're calling distribution centers, and then reducing the number of automotive dealers per auto brand in the marketplace. So they will build a much larger single entity, and people will shop online and just go there to pick up their vehicle or try it out, and they'll disband quite a number of dealerships in order to save their costs that way. Things are evolving in that direction. Additionally, Amazon is now looking at the North American marketplace. Obviously, considerable capital and expertise there. They drive, as we know from their operations, they drive lower pricing and faster delivery. And they have entered other markets in the world on a trial basis and been very successful in Europe with this model. So they are looking at North America. Overall vehicle sales were essentially stagnant or a slight decline in some prior years. I did not have access to most recent updates, but we're not looking at a market that is flourishing and growing beyond what it was in the past. Certainly, we're looking at stable sales and a method of sales that is essentially calling into question the need for the bricks and mortar in order to sell this particular product. Moving on, let's look at the valuation itself. Page number 11. We can begin here And again, this carries forward for all of the properties today, so I appreciate your patience in listening to me as we go through this. The heading that we have here, automobile dealership properties, special use facilities. So as stated in my first paragraph there, an article from October 1998 in the Appraisal Journal, which is the main appraisal journal in the United States, also very applicable to Canada, entitled "The Peculiarities of Appraising Auto Dealership Facilities." They state auto dealership facilities are considered special use or special purpose properties, which means that they cannot typically be assigned to other uses. And auto dealership facilities are typically constructed for a specific use and are not readily adaptable to alternative uses. So they do not fit the bill to be readily transferred to other retail uses, other office uses, other warehouse uses, etc. They're specifically built for the purpose that they're used, and the argument that they're directly comparable to big box retail does not hold water in the valuation community, as the structures are significantly different, and it's been shown in the marketplace that they are not structures that other users have a strong draw to or can indeed make significant use of. So the typical cycle for an automobile dealership property, as you look at them, is they will start off as a branded new automobile dealership, whether that's Volvo or Ford or Mazda or whatever it is. Following that stage, once as time goes on and the market evolves, as it has since the construction of many of these, you have a point in time where a secondary use of that property comes into play when it no longer suits the needs of the branded automobile brands. It transitions over to a used auto dealership when the original structure is essentially functionally obsolete for the main brands themselves. And you see that in the Winnipeg marketplace as well. The third phase that we typically see for these structures is essentially a redevelopment opportunity where the structure has outlived its useful life. It's no longer useful within the marketplace. The obsolescence is too great for a number of reasons, and the property is demolished and redeveloped into another purpose. So looking at the Winnipeg marketplace, beginning on page 11, we have a number of examples of this. So this is not just theoretical. You look at our examples, I think it will bear this out quite well. Number one, 3021 Pembina Highway. This is the former Winnipeg Honda property on South Pembina Highway. This property remained vacant when Winnipeg Honda moved over to Waverly West. Remained vacant for quite a number of years with no interim tenancies, essentially. Ultimately, the structure has been demolished. The property has been purchased recently, and it is going to be redeveloped into a multi-family use on that site. That was a very long-term process. The site was vacant for years and years. Number two, 1310 Regent Avenue. This was originally a Ford dealership, evolved into a used auto dealership through two owners, and it has now been demolished as its utility was gone, and it is now being redeveloped as a modern dealership, as they have some available contiguous land to make use of. They have a kind of an overall compound where they have enough space to develop a dealership on that site. Number three, 630, 640 Portage Avenue, McNaught Pontiac Buick Cadillac dealership, again in 75, moved to the Waverly Auto Mall in 2003. Became a used auto dealership and was for sale as a redevelopment site from 2011 onwards. It's now been demolished and is being redeveloped. Number 4, 2537 Pembina. This is Frontier Subaru. We went through the details on that. The Jim Pattison Group, as was their intent, moved the Subaru dealership to the Waverly Auto Mall, and they are not using the 2537 Pembina site for anything. It does not have a tenancy in there. They haven't put a used car dealership or anything in there. I think the marginal use that I've seen for it is they're using it as a leasing site for the adjacent student housing building is all that I have seen on site there. Number 5, unit 20 at 3965 Portage, that's Point West. That was the Saturn dealership. Saturn declared bankruptcy, and because Birchwood has the majority, 90% of the auto mall is owned by the same ownership. They looked at putting another main automobile brand in there. Because of the size and land size of the property, they could not draw any mainline automobile brands to that structure. So being the size that Birchwood is, they have been able to make use of the structure as a truck dealership, essentially, is what it's used for. So it's a situation where they've been able to make it work, but it's not ideal. Number 6, 3081 Portage Avenue. This was a property that was originally a branded auto dealership and has evolved into used auto dealership of various ownerships or various operators over time, and there's been extensive vacancy at that site as well. So that's the phases that we see for the dealerships. You can see that they don't transition over to retail. I'll just draw your attention to page 12 there. What we're showing here is one of the comparables that the city has is 840 St. James Street. This is the Michael's store, I think. If you look at the comparable list, it would be, is that comparable number 21? Comparable number 5, pardon me, 840 St. James Street. So that's the Michael's location. Now, so this, what we're illustrating here is the ability to reuse an automobile dealership as other retail. So keep in mind, we can't put any other retail into Point West, but if you could, let's look at what these retail places are. So you have Best Buy, Old Navy, Michael's, Save On Foods, and all of the other conglomeration of retail at Polo Park. They're there for a reason. People go to these retail centers to do all of their shopping. That's the reason developers build them like that. It drives higher rents. That is the purpose of it. In addition to that, if you look at the structure, they're significantly different. So at the bottom of the page, you have the red arrow indicating where the Michael's is. If you drive along the side of that building, they have their small little loading dock there and very minimal loading and storage area at the rear of the site. The vast majority of the square footage of these facilities is selling floor, which is entirely different than automobile dealerships. The same can be said of Old Navy as you look at its structure, as well as Best Buy. Very clear to see the differences between the two there. Moving into the valuation itself, and again, I appreciate your patience. We don't intend to do this more than once. Our approach in identifying a fair market rent for these properties is to look at the structure itself and the layouts of it, the use of it, the legal uses for them and determine appropriate rental rates on that basis. So when you look at an automobile dealership, you have essentially two portions of the building. You have the showroom retail office portion at the front, which comprises usually anywhere from 20 to 40% of the building, say, and then the balance of the building is the service garage at the rear of the building. So what we have done is essentially provide comparables for those two sections. Now, and the reason for this is you're not looking at a building that's entirely service. You're not looking at a building that's entirely showroom. It's a hybrid, and it's fair to look at the market to see what is being paid for those particular types of properties in similar locations of similar sizes in recent leases. So our automotive comparables, these are service facilities essentially. We can go through these in detail as you wish. What we're presenting here are, again, automotive service. So we have repair centers, Ultimate Auto Service. We have tire and repair centers, Fountain Tires. Sorry, bear with me for just a moment. Let me get my list out here. Fountain Tires, Midas, we have Sturgeon Tire as well. And we do have a couple of automotive sales locations. The first is a truck dealership. This is at 231 Oak Point Highway, comparable number 8, just 14,500 square feet. This was a Harley Davidson dealership. It's been converted to the auto sales there. And this is an arm's length tenancy, 2017 lease, building built in 1990. They're paying $7 a square foot. Now, I'm not going to directly compare that building and location to the subject, but that does give you an indication of what's being paid on the marketplace for a relatively recent structure for auto sales. Number 11, this is a typo, and I apologize for this. It'll be the same in each of the properties. It's 3680 Portage Avenue, and indeed the area is also slightly off, as it does not include the mezzanine that we were discussing before with the city's comps. This is a 2017 lease at based on what we originally had as the square footage of the building was $12.50 a square foot. With the mezzanine included, that would drive down that rental rate. That was a 2017 lease. That's an inferior building, significantly smaller, but similar in terms of being towards the end of Portage Avenue there. Now, our other comparables, I would also draw your attention, I guess, to 2554 Portage Avenue. This is a Birchwood Credit Solutions location. They are the tenant there and not the owner, and they are paying a rent of $7.50 a square foot, essentially on a sublease there from 2015 forwards. That's 22,877 square feet. Original building was built in '63. It has been renovated. It's right on the corner of Moray and Portage Avenue after the bridge as you come across from Charleswood. Right at the corner on Portage Avenue there. It is substandard location. The Birchwood organization is reconsidering whether they want to remain in that place because of the volume of business that they're able to generate at that site. So in short, looking at our auto comparables, if you look at the list there, obviously there's some range in age, range in size, range in use, etc. But what we're doing is framing what would be paid for a service portion of the building. And our rental rates generally are in that under $10 per square foot for the majority of these facilities. They're in that 7, 8, 9, 10 per square foot dominantly. Now, flipping the page to page 14, the other section of the building. And I think this is where things get somewhat skewed, perhaps. The showroom retail office component. So let's look at this carefully. The properties that we're trying to show here are retail locations, essentially, that are on major thoroughfares and are essentially selling to the public, and they have the same kind of showroom retail development that would be considered similar to the subject. So if you look at our first two, 400 Fort White Way, Inns Brothers and Sky Zone. Sky Zone is obviously a trampoline park, 25,000 square feet there. Modern high cube flex warehouse, beautiful facility, lease in 2013 for 10 years at $11.90 a square foot. They have not been able to make a go of it and are no longer operating. Inns Brothers is still there at $11 a square foot, roughly half the size. That is just to the west of where Costco is located on McGillivray Boulevard at that Kenaston-McGillivray confluence. So very much similar to the subject in that way. Let's move on to Lorimer. So looking at 996 Lorimer. This is just off of Sterling Lion Parkway to the east of Kenaston. So you have IKEA, Kenaston, and then as you head east on Sterling Lion, there's that large, again, modern flex warehouse. Dynasty Bathrooms is in there, 2016 at a $13.10 a square foot lease. Beautiful space, very similar to the showroom that we'd be talking about for a dealership. Numbers 4 and 5 at 1290 Kenaston. So again, the Kenaston confluence there, if you are familiar with where the Mercedes-Benz dealership is now, basically on the corner of Lowson, you go immediately north of that, still on the same side of Kenaston, you have a building that was an industrial building that was converted and redeveloped, and they have put in two showroom retail type places, Trans-Canada Brewing, half of which is a restaurant and product delivery space. The other is production. Then we have Lux Barbecue, where the entire unit is essentially a showroom facility. So that building was redeveloped in 2015, 2016 leases at $12 and $12.50. Fantastic visibility from Kenaston, obviously in Southwest Winnipeg along that corridor. Those are excellent comps for showroom retail. Very difficult to get better than those two, I believe. 1036 Waverly, 6 and 7, a little less so. This is a bit older building. Obviously, it's set back further from the roadway, and they haven't put in any glossy new redevelopment on it. The rents there reflect that, $6 a square foot. However, again, also in Southwest Winnipeg, super light lighting and the floor show are the tenancies there. Another Lorimer property, shoe retail, $12 a square foot, 2018. Modern flex warehouse, that ANS Homes location. We have another 400 Fort White Way, $11 a square foot for 4,000 square feet. 20 South Landing, similar location just beyond Fort White, automotive use, 1375 for 4,000 plus square feet. And 96 Nature Park Way. This is actually another excellent comp. This is on the west side of Kenaston. If you know where the Tim Hortons is located, this is the Terracon development. And we're looking at a 2017 lease for $11.95 per square foot in that facility. So again, fantastic visibility on the main corridor there for that end of town, and in very close proximity to the big box retail. So if you look at our comparables for showroom retail, we're in dominantly that $11 to $13 a square foot range overall, with reasons for the ones being at the higher end. So that's what we're looking at for the two sections of these type of properties. Our property is in Point West. We've gone through the details with regard to restrictions on it, with regard to zoning, with regard to the condominium declaration, etc. We've gone through the differences in structure, differences in draw for retail tenancies. There is no retail tenant that is going to relocate their business to Point West Auto Park if they could. If you look at the history of appeals, we have a very clear indication of where the rental rates were being decided by the board. 2018 business at $11.75, 2016 realty at $11.50. We're using a $12 per square foot net rent for the subject. If you take this in combination with the estimated expenses that the city uses, which we have no quarrel with, that produces a final ARV, non-rounded, as I don't have the formula for that. The final ARV that we arrive at is $244,757. Again, additional thing to keep in mind with Point West is any fair market rent that a tenant would pay on the market would be driven down somewhat by the additional costs that they would bear because of the infrastructure costs that they would be required to pay for. And indeed, if you look at the city's brief and the decision on these properties for realty, it states right in the decision that the infrastructure costs are recognized in the decision. So that that is essentially my presentation. I am not going to take you through the addenda materials for this. I've included a number of articles on the evolution of the automobile dealership industry. You can read those at your leisure. Essentially summarizes what I was describing as the shifting nature of the delivery of automobile sales. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Cole, do you have any questions?
5-minute recess.
Sure. I'll just go break for 5 minutes. Okay.
Apologize for the time that took, but we'll be quick through the others now.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order. And I think, Mr. Cole, we were at the spot where would you like to ask any questions of Mr. Smith's presentation?
Sure. I just got a few questions.
Sure.
Not to belabor the point, but you're valuing it based on restricted use, based on the condominium dealership agreement, bars anything other than full service dealership or used car dealerships or related.
Well, we're valuing it based on fair market value, and as in arriving at fair market value, you need to look at the full bundle of rights. You need to look at the legal restrictions that are in place. So it's every property on the market is not necessarily equivalent to the others. So yes, we do examine that. No, it doesn't make a huge difference in how we look at the property overall, but it is certainly a factor that needs to be taken into account.
I'll follow up on that. I'm looking at it currently right now as an unencumbered by this condominium agreement. What you said based on my comparables choices was that those wouldn't be allowed. So you are taking that into consideration. You are separating some of the marketplace that could move.
Yes, absolutely. And it needs to be indeed that you need to look at the legal circumstance of the property when you're valuing.
So if we turn to your page 14, why would you be including showroom and retail uses that are not tied to car dealerships selling or servicing?
Well, that would speak to the market essentially, right? We're looking at in the Point West circumstance, and we're dealing also today with region, so you'll see similarities obviously in how we're dealing with it. But if you look at Point West, no, you can't have these specific types of uses in those properties. But what we're showing is what rents are for the showroom type of space in similar locations. Not that use is transferable to Point West, but that this is what's being paid in the market for comparable properties or that type of use.
So let's back that up for one moment.
We don't.
The concept that rent that's being paid by a tenant would reflect back on the economic opportunity that could be generated on that site. You're taking an automotive dealership selling and servicing of vehicles, and from my understanding from sitting through numerous appeals, that the main majority of that profit that any franchisee would be experiencing would be based on the servicing of vehicles. The selling is mainly going back to the manufacturer. So when we're tying your sales or your comparables here from your showroom retail, these economic opportunity of these properties are based on trampoline park, selling of bathrooms, beer, barbecues, lighting, fitness. That's not the same marketplace. That's not the same economic opportunity that as a tenant of one of these full service dealerships, you'd be able to generate that profit on. So how are these showrooms associated for other selling, and there's no servicing on site of anything that can be reflective of what will be generated on such a properties for any one of these?
Right. No, I appreciate the point. Thank you for bringing it up. So, as I've mentioned, we're looking at the whole structure. So we have obviously a portion of what we are attributing to developing a fair market rent in looking at what is paid for showroom retail type of space in the marketplace. It's not one-to-one because you can't transfer them into the Point West, but we do have other locations that we're dealing with. Economic opportunity, yes, I would agree that being located along Kenaston would be a superior likely location, and that's a higher, certainly a higher draw area, and your tenancies that you're getting there might pay more than what you would in the properties that we're dealing with here today at Point West. So, as you had mentioned, there's extremely few full dealerships that are out there. In fact, as frontline ones, there aren't any that we can point to and say, this is how it's done. So the city has taken the position that they're looking at big box retail, essentially looking at that structure and saying that that's the same as a dealership. We've gone through why that's not the case, not just for Point West, but structurally and locationally, the special use nature, why that is different. What we're showing is if you are to put a fair rent on this, you have to look at the structure and the legal uses of it setting aside the zoning agreement in Point West and what is being paid for similar types of structures. That's why we have the showroom retail there. As I mentioned, they're typically 20 to 40% of a dealership, showroom, office, retail component of the building, and then you have service for the balance of it. Now, there's different profit centers in automotive dealerships. Obviously, there's sales and there's service and there's financing. There's the various lines, right? Selling the cars is only one of those. The second component that we have in establishing these rents is our automotive list, which is quite extensive. We're looking at 19 comparables here, and these are all automotive service related facilities. Again, I'm happy to go through them one by one if you wish, but we're looking at what's a fair rent for the service portion and what's a fair rent for the showroom office component. That's how we've based our evaluation.
Fair enough. Basically, I was trying to make clear to the panel and get your explanation that if we have a restricted use here, and your majority of your rent would be determined based on the economic profit that you can generate as a franchisee, you don't care what other smaller businesses do. No relationship. So we get over to your page 13, which is your automotive use. We see.
Sorry, I thought. Okay, you were on 14 before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just dealing with this. So for showroom. So now we're using comparables 1 through 19. Of the comparables, there are only 2 that are greater than 10,000 square feet, correct? For comparable 8 and comparable 19.
Yes, that is correct in terms of size. There's a number around 9,000 square feet, yes.
So of these, we'll take those 2 out for a moment. The rest of comparables, again, are inferior in nature by a substantial degree from the subject properties in this group of appeals today. Again, you will not be able to generate the same economic opportunity on these sites as you would. Able to sell, the volume of sales, the volume of service, you would not be able to generate that economic opportunity in these comparables.
You're basing that on the size of the facility, or what is the point? I'm not sure.
Well, in a 2,700 square foot building, 2,300 square foot building, 4,000, 2,500, 8,000 range, you're not going to be able to sell, and you're not going to be able to service the amount of, if there were to be full service dealership or even a used car dealership, you would not be able to do the volume of inventory that you need to generate the same economic opportunity that you would on subject properties. And you kind of mentioned it as you go through your analysis. You're indicating Volvo's leaving. You need to be a certain size. You need to have a certain land area. You even have to go out and look for different land areas because you store your vehicles on that site because you're doing such amount of volume on a particular property site that you need to go look on an alternative location. So you are generating a number.
We're not into. I'm not sure where the question is there. So
my question is: are these subject? Are these properties here for comparison? Do they have the same economic opportunity?
So to speak to that, and I obviously the comparables that we have here. If you look at a normal sized auto service facility in the city located on a normal thoroughfare, yeah, you're going to have some smaller Midas type size properties where they do oil changes and things of that nature, right up to full service ones that are in that 9,000 square foot, some of them slightly larger than that range. So there's going to be a variety of size. They do the same services that are performed in the service portion of these properties that we're dealing with today. And I would disagree to an extent with regard to the economic opportunity. These properties typically are, and I'm not speaking about size. Slightly misleading to say that these are smaller, therefore the economic opportunity isn't the same. We're looking at when we're including these comparables, we're not looking at the building as a whole. It's not 25,000 square feet or 17 for the subject. It's the service portion that we're looking at, which is, call it 50, 60% of the building. So that automatically shrinks it down to closer to these subjects. They may be slightly larger, but the location of Point West is a significant deterrent to many people taking their vehicles out there, as I certainly know and have been told by many people. They provide service where they will pick you up and drop you off, and all of that stuff. But it's still a deterrent if you can take your car down the block and get it serviced versus driving it from St. Patel over to Point West to get serviced and spending the time that's involved to do that out of your business day or your other dealings. So these do vary in size, but the use of them is the same. And indeed, if you have a Midas or something of that nature that's 2 or 3 or 4,000 square feet on a major thoroughfare, typically it's going to drive a higher rent because of economies of scale in those locations.
The volume of service depends on the volume of sales. So if you need to go out and get more land, make sure you have that inventory that you can sell, that means you can service more vehicles, which means as a whole, you could get much more profit than you could just operating as a standalone Midas.
Oh, you're assuming that all of the people that are buying vehicles are going back there to get them serviced, which is certainly not necessarily the case.
Which is usually the case when it comes to warranty.
I can tell you that Point West is not the top producing location for the Birchwood Automotive Group.
Go through a few other comparables. Comparable number 8, 231 Oak Point, Lone Star, used to be a former Lone Star Harley. It's now a Match Auto Market.
Yes.
Did you go through the land area versus building size?
I did not pull that part up. No.
How long was it vacant?
I believe it has a lesser land area for that facility.
How long was it vacant after Lone Star Harley left?
I don't have that detail.
Considerable amount of time.
It was vacant for a period of time. Yeah.
The ownership group may be strained in order to get any kind of tenancy in it.
That could be the case, but they did find a used auto dealer to go in there, and that is what they're paying.
3680 Portage, which you have as Pamela, it's a typo in the brief, which is fine. We have maybe an issue with mezzanine area, but we have generally about a 12 to 1250 square foot rate for a much older dealership, much smaller dealership, now an obsolete dealership, and it's used car sales.
Yes.
So the economic opportunity here would be much less than would be at one of the current locations of the franchise. We're still doing the benchmark. They're
in 7,200 square feet on Portage Avenue. That's a different proposition from being 17 or 25,000 square feet full service dealership. If you're looking at used auto dealers, yes, typically they're going to be in smaller centers such as this.
So your next comparable I'll go to is comparable 19. This was an older full service dealership again. Now no longer the case. It is Virtual Credit Solutions. This is a sublease, correct?
Yes, at that time it was, yes. Okay. It was originally, it started out life as the very first Birchwood property, full dealership back in, I don't know, the 50s or 60s. Most recently, it was Mercedes-Benz, and obviously they have moved south to Keniston.
But municipal board's been very clear that we were not to consider subleases as a good indicator of market rent. There are other factors involved in sublease that may not be our market.
The lease did not change from the prior tenancy. It stayed the same. So there's no adjustments from the 750 rental rate.
So when I'm looking through comparables 1 through 18 or 1 through 19, standalone, the average is $9.65. If I remove your low comparable number 1 at $6.50, and if I remove the $8 strain, might be a comparable number 8 for $7, and I remove the bottom two comparisons at $7.50, we come up with an average, just an average of $10.32. I've done the math. That's what it is. So for a substandard group of comparables,
That's your opinion.
it might study a little bit about $10.
Well, when you do it in that manner, yes, you're looking at a direct average. You haven't done it. You haven't done a weighted average, and you've tossed out. Tossed out 25.54 quarters, which is a legitimate lease. But that's probably that, and 231.0 point are the largest, closest similar uses to the subject. So you're taking out 7 and 750. That's going to change.
You're saying
That's going to change the average.
for an older dealership, which can only get a credit solutions, Mercedes-Benz left because obviously they left to their new dealership. That a $7.50 is a good market indicator for an older officer.
You're skewing my words somewhat. And I'm listening to you, and I absolutely hear what you're saying. What we've presented is the spectrum of the market. To say that we're saying that a single comparable is the absolute best. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is the market. These are fair market rents that are being paid out there. We have, yes, a substandard location at 2554. It is a sublease. It is an auto dealership. That is out there. 231.0 point, 15,000 square feet. Relatively new build in 1990. $7 a square foot. Yeah, that's at the bottom end of the range. I'm not denying that, but we're not taking an average and applying it to the property. It's looking at what is the property in relation to the market and applying an appropriate rental rate.
And lastly, I'll just these comparisons that we see here is simply because we don't see, and we can be great on this, we don't see franchisee full service dealerships. These that aren't in the populace that you're aware of.
Correct.
Fair enough. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions?
I don't think so. That was pretty comprehensive. So no, I'm good. Thank you.
Just to confirm, so you appealed it to the municipal board?
Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
I have no questions. So that was very thorough.
Can you do a summary statement?
Do you want to do it after each one, or do you want to do
No,
it at
just
the very
one
end? Pardon me?
One that'll be broad based.
Okay, so we'll do that at the end. Is that what you're saying, or would you like to do it now after this one?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, fine if you want.
Unless you would prefer to do it now.
Doesn't
We're all
matter.
some carbon copy field all the way through, so
Yeah.
right to the end.
Okay.
At the end? All right, that's great. All right, so that was very thorough. It took us about an hour and a half to get through that one property. So let's maybe, if we, as we proceed, we can highlight something that might be unique to those, to the arguments that you've already made, and we'll accept the arguments that have been made as carrying through for, okay? All right, we'll start now with item number 2 on our agenda. 3965 Portage Avenue, Unit 20. Mr. Paul, if you could read in the particulars and then proceed with your presentation.
Business ID number is 50693. The total annual rental value is $151,020. The total area of the premise is 9,130 square feet. The total ARV per square foot is $16.57 a square foot. The base ARV is modeled at $14.31 a square foot, 31 cents a square foot, and the total occupancy costs are $20,591. Combined with a base ARV of $130,407 gives us our value at $151.20. Exact same situation as the prior appeal, as there will be all for the Point West Group. Comparisons are on page 2, and the realty decision, which was on page 3. Appeals by either party.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
Just briefly, so the rental rate applied to this is $14.31.
Right.
It's roughly half the size of the last one. So we're looking at economies of scale when the rental rate increases here. Is that the driving factor?
Yes.
That's my only question.
I have no questions.
Just so the board order here, what was the city's position on the rent in the realty?
As far as my position here today, or was on realty, the realty rented in the same $14.
It was the same. That's all.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. I have no questions. Mr. Smith?
Okay, thank you. So we're dealing with Unit 20 at Point West Auto Park. Draw your attention to my page number 1 and just the chart that we have there. You can see the appeal history of the property as well as some additional detail. Total leasable area here is 9,113 square foot. This was the Saturn dealership that we already discussed in the first property under appeal. Saturn went bankrupt, and Birchwood, given the size and layout of the property, no longer fit a mainline dealer. It didn't even fit, say, some of your smaller brands such as Fiat or things of that nature. They were unable to draw a main brand into this facility when Saturn went bankrupt and exited the property. Birchwood, being the size that they are, they have been able to make use of the facility, but they have not been able to put another brand in there. They are using it as a truck center. GMC Chev is, I gather, the main ones that they have there, but they have all brands of trucks that they're retailing from that location in order to make use of it for a property that's functionally obsolescent. So in the marketplace, if this were standalone, typically it would have moved down the scale and or been demolished and put to another use, as it's functionally obsolescent for a main dealership, given the size of it. Looking at the appeal history on page 1, again, property was decided at $11.50 in 2016 on realty, and the business assessment for 2018 was decided at $11.75 a square foot. The photos of the property are on the first number of pages there. Description, I'm not going to go through that. The nature of the property is a special use facility we've already discussed, as shown on page 11, in tandem with the others. We have used a net rental rate for the subject property of $12 a square foot, based on the same data that we included in the earlier appeal. The rental comparables are the same. This property is 9,000+ square feet. The other was 17. Both of these are on the smaller side. that is our reason for being at a slightly higher rent than you'll see on some of the other properties. As a standalone, this would probably struggle in the marketplace. Again, all the other aspects with regard to Point West hold true. So we're using a $12 rent and using the same expense structure as the city. We come to a total ARV of 129,947. Again, that's not rounded, as I don't have the breakout for that. Thank you.
Ms. Stevens?
So I'm just, your square footage amount here is the same as the previous property, even though this is significantly smaller?
Our square footage, I'm sorry.
Your price per square foot, I'm sorry.
The rental rate,
The rental rate,
it's well, a little more than half the size, I guess, overall. Yes, and again, in the marketplace, these tend to go down to used auto dealerships, not first line, right? So we're looking.
In general, though, the smaller space would sometimes often command a higher.
In a normal use structure, yes, I would agree with that. If you look at the special use nature of these and reuse of these properties, it's not always the case.
Okay, thank you.
I have no question.
Same question about rate per square foot. So thank you. Okay, we will move along. 3965 Portage Avenue, unit number 40. Mr. Cole, whenever you're ready to start us off.
Business assessment ID number or roll number is 50694. The total annual rental value is $443,640. The total area is 29,060 square feet. Overall ARV is $15.27 a square foot. Below that is the calculation when we get to it. Base ARV is $377,780. Model rate $13. And the total occupancy cost $55,882, which produces combined are $443,640. Again, same idea as the last appeal. Comparisons are the same on page 2. And then we have the real on page 3, which is both appealed by the Assessment and Taxation Department and Stevenson.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I have no questions.
I have no questions.
No questions?
And I have no questions. Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking now at Unit 40, 3965 Portage Avenue at Point West. This is the Birchwood Chevrolet Buick GMC location. Now, if you go back in time to 2008, 2009, when the economic collapse was happening, the automobile dealerships, automobile brands were in significant difficulties. They did do an amount of consolidation. And in the Point West Auto Park, Point West was affected as well. There were 2 branded Chev dealerships in the mall, and they were forced to consolidate. So the Unit 100 lost the dealership rights for those particular brands, and it was retained at Unit 40. Now, that doesn't make Unit 40 special and more valuable. It's simply how the shakeout happened. They had to consolidate within that particular park location. So looking at Unit 40, we are now looking at a structure that is 29,060 square feet in size, so it's considerably larger. but it is a full line dealership as noted. Originally built in 2000, there was an addition done in 2013. You can see the appeal history for the subject on page number 20. Going back in time, we had a very consistent decisions from the Board of Revision up through 2016 when the property was decided based on a rental rate of $10.50 a square foot. Subsequent to that, we have had reductions, but they have not recognized what we feel to be the appropriate changes, and we have appealed both 18 and 20 to the municipal board because they did not make changes to the rental rate. Similarly, on the business side, you can see the history of the property, and generally they followed in line with what was decided on the realty side. So looking at a full line dealership, 29,000+ square feet. Our photos are on page 2 onwards. The property is as shown. Description following that, all of the other components with regard to Point West remain the same for the subject property, and we can move on to the rental rate for the subject. So looking at the subject property, we do this in a pretty consistent manner. If you look at our past appeals for the property, we have advanced our rental rate over time, recognizing that as time moves on, as long as economic circumstances support it, typically rental rates may go up in a somewhat consistent manner. So we have followed that, and we're at $11.50 a square foot for our rental rate for the subject property. If you go back to my page 1, you can see our decisions in 2016 were reflective of a $10.50 a square foot rental rate for the subject at that time. Keep in mind, we're looking at 29,000 square feet plus. It's a very significant size property. Your rental rates will be lower than for some smaller properties. So using $11.50 and the expenses that the city has for the property, which we are not disputing, we come to a final ARV unrounded of $400,072.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Cole, do you have any questions? Ms. Stevens?
No, I have no questions, thank you.
Mr.
I
McIntyre?
have no questions, thank you.
On to item number 4 on our agenda. Mr. Cole, could you read in the particulars, please?
Unit number is 45, 3965 Portage. The business assessment appeal is, the business assessment ID number is 30932. The total annual rental value is $398,400. The total area is 25,025 square feet. The total ARV per square foot is $15.92 per foot. The line below shows the calculation for that. The base ARV amount is $42,842. Model rent was $13.70 a square foot. And the occupancy cost is $55,562, which produces the annual rental value of $390,000. Same idea. Page 2 is the comparable sheet that we've reviewed in detail already. And on page 3 is the Board of Revision order for the realty appeal, which is again both appealed by Stevenson and Assessment Taxation Department.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre?
Aye.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
Great. So we're looking at Unit 45, 3965 Portage Avenue. The Property has the Mini, Mini and BMW brands in it. There has been some stirrings from one of those brands with regard to looking at another location. That has not happened to date, but it certainly is out there. Looking at my page number 1, again, you can see the background of the property. Our leasable area here is again significant, 25,025 square feet gross floor area in total. And that's similar to the last property, and yet we have a 70 cent per square foot higher rental rate applied by the city. In looking at this property, we have a total of site area of 2.3 acres and a land to plan area ratio of 4:1 here. They're very tight on display space as well as space for customers' cars, service cars, etc. Very tight, and they definitely need to make use of additional space outside of the park for this facility. Your typical range that you're looking at for a dealership now is a minimum of 8:1 and generally higher than that. That would definitely have an impact. The appeal history of the property is shown at the bottom. The property was added onto in 16 and 17, or in that 16 timeframe. I didn't include results from before that. They were the same essentially as the ones for the rest of the park. So we did achieve what we were appealing on rental rate in those prior years. Subsequently, we have had to appeal everything onwards to the municipal board. And of course, we await scheduling for that at this time. So looking at the property, is this one particularly special because it has been added onto? They built the BMW section on the back half of it. Is it going to draw that much greater a rent than other facilities in the park? Let's look at the photos and see if it's different. The service area is very similar. Yes, they have a nice glass front, newer tile, etc. there. Does the building itself draw additional rent, or is it the product that they're selling? It's the product that they're selling. The brands themselves control the look of the facilities that they're operating out of, and typically every, it varies, but it can be every 4 to 5 years or something of that nature. They require the operator to invest significant money into redoing the showroom and the look of the property, essentially to match their new brand image. It does not produce greater car sales necessarily, and I have that straight from the operators. So something they're required to do. They're not necessarily going to pay more rent for a space because of that, because it doesn't drive additional sales. I'm sorry.
They have popcorn.
They do have popcorn and coffee if you're looking. Maybe even cappuccino.
Just let me know.
So that is the property we're looking at. If you look at page number 9, it's located on the inside of the circuit. You can see the restricted land area for the property. But again, we're looking at 25,000 square feet. We have applied to the same rental rate of $11.50 a square foot to the subject property. Similar to the one that we were just looking at number 40. So using $11.50 a square foot and the expenses, which we're not disputing, we get a non-rounded ARV of $343,350 for the subject property. Thank you.
Mr. Paul?
I just got a couple questions as we go through.
Sure.
A couple questions in my mind. This particular picture on page number 9. The property is as such. The one adjacent below it, that is the non-dealership building.
That's the office building.
Correct. So on this building, there's Birchwood head office, which is straight office, right? And
Correct.
there's an insurance company and a car rental company.
Their internal IT company is on the main floor.
So would the insurance company or the rental car company, would they be arm's length tenants?
No, none of them are arm's length tenants.
There are some alternative uses other than BCD dealership, but they are.
They're all internal, as I mentioned, but they're all related to the operation of the park as an auto park.
Some of these properties, as we both well aware, have had some extensive renovations done to them, addition put onto them. That lessens their site area for volume of inventory that they can keep on the site, and also additionally for bringing the cars and moving them and giving them service coming back later picking them up. How many of these dealerships have off-site parking? Do they use a particular lot, all of them, since they're all commonly owned, or there's a dealership agreement in place with a franchisee and the ownership? Is there like one lot off-site that they all use to store their inventory on, or are they all separate?
Well, Birchwood has use of a site nearby for storage of vehicles, which I believe they use for all of the dealerships. They also have a second site on the east end of town that's strictly used for storage of vehicles.
Do you happen to have the civic addresses, or you want?
No, I don't.
You can provide them later on.
If that were something I needed to do, I could, yes.
That's the only questions I have.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
And I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay. On to item number 5 on our agenda. Let me just give me a minute while I pull up those files. Whenever you're ready.
This would be Unit 50, 3965 Portage. Business assessment ID number is 30933. The total annual rental value is $423,000. Total area of the premise is 27,414 square feet. The overall ARV is $15.43 per square foot. The line below shows the calculation and how we arrive at that value. The base ARV is $361,591 with a nominal rent of $30.19 a square foot and an occupancy cost of $61,422, which produces the $423,000. Again, our comparables are on page 2. Order revision order for the realty is on page 3. Again, both appealed by the system.
Mr. Smith?
I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Smith, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So we're looking now at Unit 50 at the auto park. This is Birchwood Nissan and Birchwood Infinity are the brands operating out of this facility. So double brands. The detail is on my page number 1 for us to review. Again, more or less the same as the others. This property was originally constructed in 2001 with an addition for the one brand in 2012. It is on 2.5 acres, so you have a very low land to plan area ratio here of just under 4, 3.97 to 1. Total leasable area, 27,414 square feet. So again, it's a significant sized dealership structure. Our appeal history is shown there, 2020 Realty and 2018 Realty. We have had to appeal prior to that. The decisions are shown. 2016 Realty was based, Board of Revision decision based on a rental rate of $10.50 a square foot. Prior to that, you can see we had appealed 14 and had an agreement at the municipal board, which was an agreement granted. 2012 is prior to that, and prior to the addition, prior to the supplementary that would have been issued. I'm sorry, losing my voice here. That's a good thing. They all want me to brief. 2018 business decided on the basis of $11.50 a square foot. We weren't precisely in agreement with that, but it was close and we did not appeal it. The property photos are shown on 2 and 3, description following that. And the site is shown on page 6. So again, you can see the limited nature of the land in relation to the structure itself. It impedes circulation. The display space is pretty minimal on the exterior, certainly on the front. And just overall, it's not suitable for a modern dealership in that regard. On to the ARV itself. We can skip through the material that we've covered on all of the reasons that we arrive at our rental rate that we apply. Please keep those in mind as we go forward. We're not strictly looking only at the lease comparables that are provided, but the reason that the subject should have the rental rates that we apply to it based on all of the detail included in our report. So we covered that quite thoroughly in the first one. Please keep that in mind as we go forward. Again, looking at the subject, we're 27,000 plus square feet, significant size auto dealership. And we have applied a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot to the subject. Again, we were not in agreement with the $11.50 that was decided on business in the last cycle, but it was not worth disputing at that point in time. So we don't need to just ratchet up from there. We were below that. The decision was at $11.50. There's a reason we're at $11.50 and not higher. Pardon me. Look at the comps. It's pretty clear where the rental rate would lie in the marketplace. So using $11.50 a square foot and the expenses, which we're not disputing, our final ARV non-rounded is $376,684. Thank you.
Mr. Holt,
No.
Ms. Stevens,
No questions, thanks.
Mr. McIntyre.
I have no questions.
Would people like to have a little break right now, or do you want to push on and finish the Portage Avenue ones and break after that?
That sounds like a good idea on my hand.
All right, then we'll move on to 3965 Portage Avenue, Unit 70. Mr. Cole, whenever you're ready.
Unit 70, business ID number is 50698. The total annual rental value is $509,340. The total area is 32,903 square feet, and the total ARV is $15.48 a square foot. Below is the breakdown, or I'll get to the calculation. The base ARV is $434,978 with a model rent of $13.20 a square foot. Total occupancy cost of $74,376, which is $509,340. The following page is the same set of comparables we've been using this afternoon. And on the page after that is the realty decision from the Board of Revision for the 2020 cycle. Both again, both the assessment taxation department and Steve has it.
Mr. Smith,
I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre.
I just have one comment. How come the border revision order is vertical?
Yeah.
Just a question.
You know why?
Oh,
Oh, you did? Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, wait. We have these new printers now.
Okay, no, I just had a comment that
We got fancy printers.
It's much appreciated.
it's nice. That was my own
Okay.
comment.
I just also have a question, I guess, about the rate of the square foot, the rent, the base rent. Last property was 27,400-ish. 1319 was used. This is virtually the same. 1322 is 5,000 square foot larger. Can you just explain your model and how it came up?
Typically, it's economies of scale, but it also factors into the age of the building as well.
So what age is this building compared to the other one? And would quality also play a role?
Would, but
I appreciate economies of scale, but in this case, this one's bigger and it's got pretty much the same rent as the previous one, which is smaller.
I don't have that in my brief. I apologize for not having the areas associated with the build. It doesn't appear to be in the film street either. But mainly, like, my emphasis today isn't so much on whether it's $13.22 or one way or the other. My main view of the same as the last request with the West was we have a marketplace of around $18 from our analysis that we should not asking for the increase. When I see rental ranges between $13 and $14, I think that's more than reasonable. But as far as
So you're looking
economies
more
of
in a
scale.
range.
Yeah,
range.
typically it's economies of scale and also the age of the building. Majority of these are built in 2000, 1999, that kind of era. And then there's an additional one, so those factors are added.
May I ask a follow-up question? Just quickly. So I think I heard you mention there that you see the market from your comps being around $18. Is that correct? So that would be largely in line with your comp number 5, 840 St. James, roughly 25,000 square feet. That being the Michaels example.
Would comp again, sorry.
Number 5.
840, yeah.
That is the Michaels. Okay, thank you.
But having said that, we brought in 27 comparables, all very different products. So you're not isolating one comparable. You're just trying to take what the market is.
My only question.
Mr. Smith?
All right, thank you. So we're now looking at Unit 70 at Point West Auto Park. This is the Birchwood Toyota, Birchwood Lexus. Now, Lexus has already moved. They are in a new facility on property adjacent, well, in the south end of the city. They've not been in residence here for a short period of time. So they are the smaller of the two brands overall in terms of the amount of property that they consume, but it's a significant gap in the property that we're looking at. So Toyota itself, obviously a significant brand, but the overall space is likely too large for what they're able to utilize on their own. Looking at subject property again, yes, we're looking at a significantly larger property here, 32,903 square feet. Significant mezzanine area that's built out as office, nearly 2,900 square feet. And you can see the other details there. Originally, it was built in 2004. Since that time, the main structure has always, I think they added on to the Lexus side. I cannot say what year that was. And they did also add on a quick service bay on the north end of the property there. You can kind of see on my front page a little glass area there where you drive your cars in to begin the servicing process. Anyway, moving back to page number 1, you can see the appeal history. Again, going back 2016 Realty, we had a decision based on $10.50 a square foot. We have increased our rental rate over time since that time frame and prior to that time frame in a very consistent manner. We have had to appeal the 18 and 20 Realty decisions because they did not reflect the rental rates that we feel would be appropriate in the marketplace. The business decisions are also there for you. In 2018, we had to appeal as well. The others we did not, as noted. Photos of the property begin on page 2. You can see the exterior, the service bay, showroom. Description is there for you. The site is shown on page number 6. It's at the north end of the property. Of the overall Point West Park, rather. Again, please keep in mind the discussion from the first appeal when looking at the rental rate applied and the overall ARV. Is the reason we come to our numbers. And looking at the subject in relation to the comparables that we provided on page numbers 13 and 14. We have, again, an overall rental rate of $11.50 a square foot. Now, I recognize it's the same, but we're not going to make minute little changes based on, whether it's 29,000 or 32,000. We're generally looking at large full-scale dealerships and then undersized dealerships. So when they're on the lower end, our rental rate is slightly higher, despite the fact that they're likely undersized for first-line branded auto dealers in today's day and age. We do have a slightly higher rental rate on those. When you're on the higher end, obviously the rental rate reflects that. So we're not changing them by 25 cents here and there. We're looking at $11.50 for the large, unless there's something exceptional or something that would bring that rental rate down dramatically. So we have applied $11.50 per square foot. Again, this is in line with our 2016 Realty decision, $10.50. We've ramped up the rental rate since that time. Using $11.50 and the expenses, which we're not disputing, we come to a final ARV unrounded of $452,762. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Poole? Stevens?
No questions, thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
And I have a question.
Right, we'll move on to item number 7. Let's just take a minute and pull those files up.
Unit 75 of 3965 Portage Avenue. The business ID number is 50699. The total annual rental value is $373,320. The total area of the premise is 24,159 square feet. The overall ARV is $15.45 a square foot. The calculation is below is for the base ARV of $308,899 with a model rent of $13.20 a square foot. The total occupancy cost is $4,393, which produces the $373,320. Same as every other West group today, appeal today, I should say. Our comparables are on the next page, and then the DLT decision for the subject property. follows, and again, jointly appealed by, or duly appealed by Assessment Taxation Department and Steve Municipal.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions?
I do not.
Mr. McIntyre?
Aye.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. So unit 753965 Portage Avenue is the, pardon me, Birchwood Honda dealership, Birchwood Honda West. And flipping to my page number 1, you can see the detail for the property. This one is certainly undersized again on the land to plan area ratio, 2.4 acres. We have a land to plan area ratio of 4.5 roughly to 1, significantly undersized for an automobile dealership for their purposes. Leasable area, 24,159, including some second floor mezzanine area built out as office. Property was originally constructed in 1999, and it did have an addition to the space in 2009. Pardon me. The history, obviously, same as the remainder of the park, with the exception of, I will note, the office building as well as the collision center, Unit 60, where we've generally gotten exactly what we wanted. We had to appeal the 2018 and the 2020 realty decisions to the municipal board as well. Yes, just the realty for 18 and 20. Going back in time, you can see the 2018 business decision was based on a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot at the Board of Revision. We were not specifically in agreement with that, but again, we did not feel it was worth appealing at that time. The history of it goes back there for you. You can see the regular steps and then the leap to the 2020 numbers, both in realty as well as business. Photos are on pages 2 through 4. Review those. The building improvements follow that. The site is shown on page 7. It's at the point of the inside of the loop. You can see the crowded nature of the site. All of our remaining commentary is the same. We are, again, looking at a significant size property here at 24,159 square feet. We've applied a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot to the subject. Using the same expenses, we come to a final non-rounded ARV of $332,222. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Poole, do you have any
I have
questions?
no questions.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Martin?
And I have no questions.
Pull up number 8. Okay, item number 8 on our agenda, 3965 Portage Avenue, Unit 100. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Poole.
Business assessment ID number is 50696. The total annual rental value is $461,760.
Scared me.
Total area is 30,100 square feet, and the total ARV per square foot is $15.52 a square foot. To arrive to that ARV, the calculation is below. The base ARV is 39,475 square feet. The model rent of $13.02 a square foot. Total occupancy cost of $69,276, which gives us our $461,760. And the same as before. Comparisons are on the next page, followed by the realty order, which was for the board revision and subsequently appealed by both parties to the principal.
I have no questions.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So we're now looking at Unit 100 at 3965 Portage. This is a Kia dealership, Birchwood Kia West. Formerly, it was a different brand, as already noted earlier in the description. The consolidation of some of the brands in the marketplace following the economic collapse in 2007-8 period affected Point West Auto Park, and the subject property was certainly one of those. The brand that was present was consolidated into a single location in the park, and they did need to search around for another branding that they could put in place. That took a period of time, but they did ultimately put Kia into this particular site as they were looking to enter the market at that time. They had not been present prior to that time, so they had some limited options largely in terms of looking at where to locate in the market as a brand, that is. Page number 1, property was originally built in 99, 2000. That is the dominant age of the property. We're looking at a little over 30,000 square feet, which includes some significant mezzanine area. The history of the property is there for you to see on the realty and business side. Again, looking at 2018 business, the property was decided based on a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot for the subject property. The photos are there for you to see on pages 2 through 4, description following that. Our rental comparables remain the same for the subject property. Pardon me. Again, keep in mind, we're looking at property over 30,000 square feet. This is a lot of space to rent. There will be an impact on the market in terms of your larger dealerships having a lower rent than the smaller ones, typically in a normal circumstance. So again, we've applied a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot, similar to the other large dealerships in the auto park. So using that $11.50 a square foot rate, as well as the expenses, which we don't dispute, we come to a final unrounded ARV of $415,524.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
And Mr. McIntyre.
All right, no questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the Portage Avenue properties. Now I'll just ask, would you like to hold off summation to the very end? Is there a need for summation on just the Portage properties versus the other ones? Because I'm not really sure what we're going to be hearing differently on the Regent ones. That's why I ask. It's up to you. We can hold off to the end or do 2.
I don't mind doing it as one if you want to do one now and after. I mean,
I can probably time up both.
Time up both at the same at the end. That works for everybody.
that's fine.
Okay. Would anybody like a break? 10-minute break?
Or 5-minute break.
5-minute break?
Sure.
Okay, 5-minute break. We'll be back here at 3:25. That actually is a 6-minute break.
Drive a hard one.
Pardon me?
Drive a hard one.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We're now dealing with item number 9 on our docket, 810 Regent Avenue West. Mr. Cole, whenever you are ready.
Business assessment ID number is 41189. Total annual rental value is $203,100. The total area is 13,243 square feet. The overall ARV is $15.34 a square foot. Below is how we come to the calculation. As you can see, this is one of the older dealerships that we still have yet to make back into one economic unit. There's 4 pins. They range from $10.50 a square foot to $16.44 a square foot for the business premises. We then, our occupancy total costs are, they are $21,859 added to our base premise. Is 189,245 sums to 203,100. And again, our same comparables are on the next page that we've been using all afternoon. And then on the next page is an aerial of the property. It's an older dealership. The original building was built in 1973, which is the back end.
Sorry, which year? I just missed it. Oh, no, sorry, which year did you say it was built?
There's 3 segments under that.
Oh, sorry.
So the back segment, which is facing Pandora, was built in 1973. Middle segment was built in 1984, and the front segment was built in 2009. So I look for municipal board orders. That's been kind of the theme, or municipal board appeals. That's been the theme today. But there hasn't been any. This property sold last in the real estate agent was sold last in 2013 for a value of $4,125,000. The sworn value was the same, $4,125,000, and there has been no appeals since for real. So there is no appeal. So there is no movement forward for this particular realty.
Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, no.
Mr. McIntyre
I have no questions.
and Ms. Stevens?
Nope, no questions, thank you.
So you've used different rates for each of these premise IDs. And can you just quickly tell me what they are and I guess you can't. Okay.
No, you can tell from the area. Like, you look at the front, the 2012, the front little box, that would be the 2,900 square foot premise.
For what is that?
That would be for the showroom.
The showroom.
Then if you look at the next 1984, that would be the front one would be for the 1530 premise. The middle one would be for the 2913, and the rear to the building would be the 5200.
Okay, so if I'm just looking at your front page, then premise area 1530 is
Right here.
and
First
it
two.
is what?
Pardon?
And it is what used for what?
The front is the showroom.
Show the 1530 premise area, and the 2913 is I'm talking about area.
Yeah.
Is which?
This section.
And what is that component? What is that used for?
We wouldn't have that as a vehicle service space, so that would be the office area.
It's the office area?
It'd have to be, because the last 2 bids
Uh-huh.
are the ones that we have for the back end of the.
The service area. Okay, so the service area is approximately almost 9,000 square feet of this total of 13. Okay, thank you very much for explaining that to me.
May I ask a quick follow-up
Sure.
question? So just in that breakout, then you're saying that the 1530 is the front showroom office area?
Well, it would be if your front showroom and office area would be the 1530 plus the 2913.
Plus the 2913.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought So because there's three sections to the building, right? There's the original part at the back at Pandora, and then they added on that perpendicular part, and then they built the showroom.
And the
Modern
office
showroom
showroom would be
front.
air conditioned fully.
Right. So the rental rate applied to the 1530 square feet, which is the showroom, is 1127 a square foot.
Right.
Okay. That's all the question.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes, thank you. So we're representing the tenant for the subject property, not the owner. The owner, as noted, hasn't appealed their realty and or business since they purchased the property for some reason. The former occupant was the owner, and it was Auto Gallery. It was a used auto center in any case in this location. Prior to that, it had been a Hyundai, I believe, in this location at one point, probably prior to 2013. Jeremy, you might know that. I'm not sure. And at the present point in time, Birchwood is actually operating out of this facility on a very short-term basis as they are demolishing two of their facilities further to the west on Regent, and did not have the space in which to operate their sales for Ford. So they're operating out of this facility, which they do not own. It's a very short-term temporary arrangement forced by redevelopment of their other facilities. So it's not, that's the setup. That's why we have nothing to do with the realty appeals in the past and or business. It's simply the business at this point in time. As mentioned, property was built in 3 stages, 73, 84, and 2009, with the front showroom being the most recent of that development. It sits on just under 2 acres, land plan area ratio 6.4 to 1. If you drive the site, it's very long and narrow. It is somewhat cramped in terms of having circulation and display space on site for an auto dealer. Overall size, leasable area 13,243 square feet. And as mentioned, the realty was not appealed either now or in the past. Photos of the property begin on page 2. Fairly straightforward in terms of the showroom space. You can see open steel deck ceiling, tile flooring, et cetera, et cetera. They have some mezzanine office space for their sales people there as well. As you progress back, there's service area in the middle. There's 2 bays located on one side, as you can see in my top photo on page 2, for servicing as well. Largely detailing. There is some element of service as you go further back in the property, and then the space at the very rear, which is shown at the bottom of page 4, essentially used as a storage warehouse. They don't operate any service out of there. They're simply storing materials in there at the present time. Further description on page 5, and the site is shown on page 6. So it's towards the far end of Regent Avenue West, just inside of Plessy Road. So it would be the last auto dealership essentially on Regent Avenue. Looking on page number 7, we're now away from Point West. So let's look at this a little bit. I'll have some further aerials for the other properties. As noted, 810 Regent is on the far end of Regent, just inside of Plessy. As you go further west, you get into more of where the dealerships are. There is a community shopping center on the north side of Regent from where this is. There's a couple of used auto dealers. There's a hotel next door to them, and then you have various uses as you move towards where the other auto dealers are, which is located further west on Regent. Regent itself, the dominant retail developments, your Kildonan Park shopping centers and the outlets, big box centers are at that Regent and Lagimaudier intersection on 3 corners, essentially. You've got your Walmarts and Home Depots, etc., on the southeast corner, Kildonan on not the northeast corner, but on the north side, and then that's the agglomeration of retail. That's not where the car dealerships are. They're located significantly further to the east, across the train tracks and beyond where Costco is. In fact, beyond where the Club Regent Casino is, essentially starting at that point. So that's our location. Our commentary regarding automotive industry is still there, still relevant. The subject property size. So we're looking at 13,243 square feet in size. Again, this is an undersized facility. It's a facility built in stages as well. We're looking at 1973 is the beginning part, 84. It's choppy. It's difficult to show in the photos, but it's certainly not laid out ideally. There's no flow. The rear section of the building, as noted, is not used for service. That's a relatively low ceiling there. That is the structure we're looking at. So you compare that to our lease rates from the market, which we've gone through exhaustively here. I'm not going to go through them again. You're going to ask, why am I using an 1150 square foot rental rate on this? We have a small addition to the building, which is the showroom. We have substandard space at the back, which is choppy, and they're located at the bitter end of the automotive strip. In fact, they're somewhat separated from the rest of them. There's no cohesiveness there in terms of them being in line with all the others. So the dealership is heading towards that phase where it might be better redeveloped into another purpose. In fact, immediately adjacent to them, the corner site is being redeveloped into a Wendy's location. I believe it was a used car dealership prior to that time frame and is now being redeveloped. The subject property, Suzuki, not Hyundai, Suzuki, my mistake. The subject property was a Suzuki dealership as a first line dealer, probably prior to 2013, and has subsequently become used auto and is now this interim, very short-term use by Birchwood, after which time we'll see what happens with it. That's why we're at 1150. So using 1150 as well as the expenses, which we're not disputing, we come to $174,153 as an unrounded ARV. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Mr. McIntyre?
Just one, how short is the short term?
Slightly over 2 years.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Stevens?
No questions?
And I have no questions. Item 10 on the agenda is 1300 Regent. Mr. Cole, whenever you're ready.
Regent business assessment ID number is 41190. The total annual rental value is for $461,160. The total area is 32,425 square feet, and the overall ARV is $14.22 a square foot. The premise the base ARV for the premise is $391,046, which is modeled at a $12.06 square foot rate. Our total occupancy costs are $70,130, and the total for base ARV and occupancy costs are annual rental value of $461,160. Again, our comparable sheet is on the next page, as well as the 2020 realty assessment board order from the Board of Revision, and both have been appealed. It is only been appealed by the Assessment Taxation Department.
Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. No.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no question.
Ms. Stevens?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, your presentation?
Yes, thank you. So we're looking at 1300 Regent Avenue West. This is the Birchwood Ford facility. This is the facility where they're having to make temporary use of 810 Regent Avenue West for automotive sales, as they're undergoing a redevelopment of this site for Ford, and are not able to make full use of the showroom space, etc. So their sales are taking place at 810 Regent in the interim. So the property will at some point get a supplemental whenever that's completed. The property won't be completed for a considerable amount of time. The redevelopment of the building and the structure. So subject property as it is, which is what we're dealing with, built in 1986. It is 32,425 square feet in size. It has over 5,000 square feet of developed mezzanine area, office space essentially for the property, some storage on site there. So 1986, it's a considerably older property. If you look at my page number 1, you can see the appeal history again. We have, in this case, different day for the appeal. We had a 2020 realty decision at the Board of Revision, where the decision was based on $11.50 a square foot, which is what we put forward as the appellant for the subject property. The 2018 realty, we had to appeal to the municipal board, and 2016 Board of Revision decision was based on $10.50 a square foot. Similarly, 2018 business, we had to appeal the municipal board. 2016, there was a slight wrinkle, and they used $11.15 a square foot in the business Board of Revision decision. If you care to see the 2020 realty, I have included it in the addendum materials, including the decision, as well as the workup that we provided in arriving at our figures, which will bear out that it was based on $11.50 a square foot. So let's look at the subject property. Photos are on pages 2 forwards. You can see the exterior, the redevelopment side of the property, pardon me, the interior of the showroom space, the rear service area, the seating area for clients, etc. Building improvements are shown further described on page 5 for you to go through if you wish. And the site is shown on page number 6. So as you can see, the layout is as shown on page 6. Moving on to property location. You've got a greater size aerial here, so we can now see all the way over to Lagimodiere Boulevard. And as I'd already mentioned, your retail node is at Lagimodiere and Regent. You have Kildonan Place, you have Kildonan Crossing, Crossroads Station, Shopping Center, which is the big box side on the south. That's where the retail is located. They're located there for a reason. They're bunched together for a reason. They pay higher rents for a reason. The automotive dealers are located much further to the east, beyond the rail tracks, and they're all located in that similar location as shown on page number 7. Automotive industry description, again, is there for you to keep in mind when we arrive at the final ARVs. Moving on to the ARV for the subject. Would again point out the automobile dealership property special use facilities description on page 10 and the cycle of these things. 1310 Regent Avenue, immediately adjacent to the subject, same ownership. Started life as a small Ford dealership, is now demolished, and they are redeveloping it into a modern dealership, as they have available contiguous land to make use of. That's the cycle of these places. The subject property is essentially undergoing the same thing, except they're going to make use of some of the facility in the modern dealership. But it has largely outlived its useful life. So moving on to the ARV, we're looking again at over 32,000 square feet. We could have applied $11 a square foot, perhaps, to the subject property, but again, I have gone with $11.50 a square foot for the subject. We're looking at essentially the same type of property, slight variations in size. So we've applied $11.50 a square foot. Again, it could be lower for this particular property. 2016 realty was decided again based on 1050. So using our rental rate of 1150 and the expenses for the subject property, we arrived at an unrounded ARV of $443,019. Thank you.
Mr. Cole, do you have any questions? Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no question.
Thank you. We'll go to number 11 on the agenda, 1376 Regent Avenue West. And when you're ready, Mr.
1376 Regent Avenue West. Business ID number is 31782. Total annual rental value is $201,020. The total area is 12,356 square feet with a total ARV per square foot of $17 per square foot. We have 2 premise incomes on this property. We have base ARVs of $14.61 and $15.16 a square foot. The associated areas. And we have total occupancy costs of $17,686 and $1,145. Our base ARVs are $110,276 and $72,889. Those totaled produce the $211,020. If you look on the following page, it's just an aerial photo of the property. We're dealing with the BCD, which is the top portion. The co-op there is collision center. So comparables are the same that we're using. It's on the following page. As well as after that, the 2020 board order, which we have appealed, board official order, which we have appealed to the municipal board.
Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Okay. Mr. McIntyre? Ms. Stevens?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Smith, the presentation whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you. So 1376 Region Avenue West, this is, pardon me, Birchwood Kia Motors. It is, as noted by Mr. Pohl, part of a larger realty property where there is a cooperative gas station, C-store, car wash on the corner of Owen and Regent. And then at the rear of the site, if you look at my cover page, this is the collision center, the co-op, and the dealership is the one fronting on Regent, but not on the corner. So that is the property we're dealing with. This was the sister site to the Saturn dealership in the Point West Auto Park. This was also a Saturn dealership built in '97 with Saturn as the dealer, or rather the brand. Obviously, they went out of business in '08, '07. And subsequently, the property had to be retooled into other branding. That took a little bit of time, but Birchwood had the reach, I guess, the ability to draw Kia, a smaller dealer, new to the market, into this particular facility. So it's not that this facility was stellar and Kia was out seeking it. They were seeking to get into the market, and Birchwood had a property that they needed to fill. So it ultimately worked out that they were able to get a brand to go into this one. It's also, pardon me, where's my size? Sorry, distracted for a second here. It's also of a slightly more conventional size than the one in Point West. This one is 12,356 square feet, which is definitely on the small size for a branded first line dealership these days. However, Kia was on the smaller end of the scale, and they've been willing to make it work so far. Now, looking at my page 5, the site itself, the actual portion of the site devoted to the dealership is relatively small. Their land to plan area ratio will be quite small. We can't determine it as it's not broken out in that fashion, but the co-op has its segment, and the entire back half of the property is used for the collision center and the cars that are in for collision repair. That's where the cars are stored for that facility. So the corner that the dealership is on is relatively small. They'd be well under 8 to 1, and they do store vehicles off-site. The decisions for the property are shown on page 1, 2020 Realty, as noted, based on our appeal, $11 a square foot for the subject property, $10.50 in 2016. Photos begin on page 2, running through page 3. It's a bit older in terms of its finishes inside for the subject. Description, beginning on page 5 through 7. The site is shown on page 8. You get a good image of the aerial. You can see the somewhat cramped nature of the site that the dealership would occupy, with, again, the rear half, all of that fronting on Pandora, being devoted to the collision center. So in looking at the subject property, the size, the build out, again, for the subject, this would typically fall into the used auto section. Birchwood was able to draw a starter brand in the market, a lower end, smaller brand, and put them in place. We've assigned a rental rate of $11 a square foot to the subject property. Again, the 2020 realty was decided based on that, as you can see in the addenda materials if you go through those. So using $11 a square foot and the expenses, which we don't dispute, we come to a non-rounded ARV of $163,847.
Mr. Paul, do you have any questions? Ms. Stevens, do you have
No questions, thank you.
any? Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Next one. Okay, we're on item number 12. Mr. Paul, when you're ready.
The next two property, or the next two business that's been appealed are on the same parcel, but this one here is the new dealership, not the used car dealership. So, and I'll get that in. 1401 Regent, the business assessment ID number is 1938. Total ARV is 399,900. The area is 25,944. The overall ARV rate is $15.41 a square foot. The base ARV is $342,201 with a model rent of $13.19 a square foot. The total occupancy costs are $57,070, which is annual rental value of $399,900. So it's not in my brief, but it is in the Helen's brief. We're dealing with this property here. It's just service new car dealership. It was built in 2005. There is 22,444 square feet on the main area and about a 3,500 square foot of the men's area of that total. So comparables are the same that we were discussing this afternoon on page 2, and on page 3 is the investment folder, which is the assessment. Adam, what are the questions?
Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Ms.
I have
Stevens?
some questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you. So we're dealing with 1401 Regent Avenue West here. As Mr. Cole mentioned, if you look at the aerial on the front of my property, or front of my brief rather, there are two buildings on site. 1401 is the larger of the two. That is the first line or first run Honda dealership. The smaller building is the used auto, which is 1411, the property that we're dealing with following this. So the Birchwood Honda being 1401 Regent Avenue, it is located on the northwest corner, kind of across the street from property we're just dealing with, 1376 Regent. If you look at my page number 1, you can see the details regarding the property. Sorry, it's my dad. Originally built in 2005, we have a overall site area of 3.5 acres, overall land plan area ratio for the site of 4.68 to 1. So definitely on the small side for a full-scale dealership. Leasable area, just under 26,000 square feet. And the history of the property is shown at the bottom. We just had supplementals for 19 and 20 issued. Those were appealed at the Board of Revision, and they were decided based on $11 a square foot as a rental rate for 2019 and $11.50 for 2020. You can see the rest of the history there below that. Photographs are shown on pages 2, 3, and 4. Description of the improvements on page 5, fairly briefly. I think that's been covered. You can go through that if you wish. There is some mezzanine space with office build out, boardroom, offices, etc. The site is shown on page 6, so you can see the layout of the site on the northwest corner of Owen and Regent. The larger building again being 1401. And the property location on page number 7. Moving forward, I will skip the material that we have covered in the first one. Our rental comparables, again, the same ones present on page 12, both automotive and showroom retail on page 13. We have applied a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot to the subject property, 25,944 square feet. And this gives us $298,356 in rental income, including the expenses to this. We arrive at an ARV unrounded of $356,072. The realty decision is in the addenda along with our workup to show you the $11.50 rate for the subject. Thank you.
Mr. Paul, do you have any questions? Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
And I have
Go to the last property on our agenda today, 1411 Regent Avenue West.
the site number is 1939. And again, this is the property adjacent to the one we just, it's still in the same parcel, but just the building adjacent to what we just discussed. So annual rental value is for 109,320. Total area is for 6,677 square feet with a total ARV per square foot rate of $16.37 a square foot. Base ARV is 94,279, which model rent applied to get there is $14.12. The total occupancy costs are $15,068, which combined produce the $109,320. Again, the same as every other property, comparables sheet is on the next page. And then following that is the realty order, the 2020 cycle, which shows a reduction that we appealed to the municipal board.
You said the city had appealed it.
Yeah, we appealed the city.
Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Ms. Stevens?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So 1411 Regent Avenue West is also a Birchwood property. This is the used Honda vehicles facility. As noted, it is has a leasable area of 6,677 square feet. This shows you the cycle of these things. This was the Honda dealership. Originally, considerably undersized for modern dealership, obviously. They transitioned to a new building, and because they own the site and they have the reach to do so, they operate a used car dealership out of this one. So we've gone from first line dealership to a used car dealership. If this was not on Birchwood site, it could potentially be demolished and put to another use, redevelopment of that site following the normal cycle. Or potentially it could continue as a second line used car dealership under another ownership or or tenancy for that matter. So again, land to plan area ratio, very low, 4.68 to 1, very low leasable area, under 7,000 square feet. Our decisions are the same as it's on the same realty as 1401 at 1150 at the border revision for the 2020 realty, 11 for the 2019 realty at the border revision. Photographs are on pages 2 and 3 with some brief description. Originally built in 86 with minimal, marginal updates to the flooring, etc. since that time. The site and location are obviously the same, and just as we're on the very last one, and I'm not going to go through these, I would just point out that we went through some considerable description in our first appeal. All of that holds true for all of these today. So looking at the automotive industry on page number 6, looking at the special use nature of automotive dealerships on page 8, the convertibility to other retail uses on page 9. All of that is presented for all of the properties today. So please keep that in mind when looking at the rental rate that you decide upon in your decisions. Looking at the subject, again, we kind of treated the property as a single entity in the realty, and it was decided based on 1150 a square foot. There's kind of two ways of looking at this. We could say, well, it's a smaller property, it would lease for more given economies of scale, but that's not really borne out in the marketplace for these small second run automotive facilities. So you could say, well, it will lease for less because it's not of the same utility as a modern dealership. We've applied the same rental rate of $11.50 a square foot. We could be at the same $11 a square foot that we used across the road for the 9,000 square foot Kia dealership, but I've stuck with $11.50 because it was decided at the board and we did not pursue that beyond that. So using $11.50 as the rate and the expenses that we're not disputing gives us a final ARV unrounded of $91,853. And again, the addenda materials include that realty decision as referenced, or the realty decisions. As well, at the very back, you have the articles that I've provided with regard to the future of the automotive dealership itself and how that realty is changing based on modern purchasing patterns. Thank you.
No.
Ms. Stevens,
No, I'm good, thanks.
Mr. McIntyre.
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. I believe both of you have indicated desire for summations, so we can do that now.
I guess to clarify our positions. 3 points. Hopefully, there are no franchise car dealership, full service dealership, arm's length. There hasn't been for as far back as time. Nothing that I can bring to market here today to provide business assessment rental rates that we use today. So from that point, we need to go and look into the marketplace and see what's the most similar comparison that we can use here for economic substitutions. If there isn't any actual franchise tenants. On one hand, you can use our retail argument, steel shell buildings, slab on grade, minimal construction, interior wise, same footprint for land area, and take those rental rates and put them into these dealerships. That I think is the most reasonable way to do it. They're selling a product, given retail notice. And these subject properties here, they're selling a product and the servicing product on top of it. But retail is the main driver of it. Every single income expense questionnaire, they're always checking off retail. So I mean, they're selling the service back into the franchisee that makes the money off of that, whereas the manufacturer makes the majority of the money off the selling. So when we look at that, should we be using economic rent that if these property owners wouldn't be property owners anymore, they would go out into the marketplace and retail nodes, look for a building of similar size, similar footprint on the building area, similar economic utility, what rent would they bear? What rent would the marketplace make them bear? The same rents that I brought in and paid for. The choice today is to use the Ellis range, which is, it appears to be the automotive end of it on page 10. I think it's always on page 10 of its briefs, where they are substandard by far amount to the automotive full service dealerships. You cannot generate the economic opportunity on these comparables that is brought in that you can at the subject properties that we've heard today. So if you're looking at from a automotive related to an automotive related, you're on such a discrepancy where you see from the comparables that you would never have these rent rates in place at subject properties. So I think our line of valuing it based on the retail argument is the most equitable for the marketplace, and I think that's the one that should be adopted by the
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. So I'll just say to start, let's set aside the additional restrictions, et cetera, in Point West. Those are there and need to be addressed and considered in the decisions, but set that aside for a moment. Let's just say it's exactly the same as Regent Avenue and the others. Our approach to valuing these properties is you have, as Mr. Cole said, you have automotive dealerships, and there are no first line branded auto dealers out there that are leased on an arm's length basis. We cannot pull market leases forward to show you what the market's paying for these places. So how do you value them? So in order to do so, you need to look at the structure in place, its utility in the marketplace, how it's demised, etc., and location. So much of the point that I've been making here is that, and if you go back into the text, you can see on the discussion of dealership properties as special use properties, they are built for this purpose. They're not convertible to a retail purpose. So let's say a retail tenancy such as a Michael's or Best Buy or whatever was looking for a space. They would not select these structures to locate in for several reasons. A, the structure doesn't make any sense for them to have to be torn down and rebuilt to suit their purposes. And B, they wouldn't locate in these locations because it's not where the agglomeration of retail is. No big box retailer, food player, whatever, is going to locate where these facilities are. They locate where they are for a reason. We have in our company, Cushman and Wakefield Stevenson, we have a number of specialists in leasing out new retail developments, and I've spoken to them at length and know in great detail that there's absolutely no interest from any retail tenancy of any kind in locating in a automobile dealership. It is simply a non-starter. The properties don't work. So how do you come up with the right rent? You look at the structure. You have showroom retail. Let's look at well-located showroom retail, which we've done in our list. A number of them right along that Keniston corridor, paying in that $11, $12.50 per square foot for that front section of your building. modern high cube developments along Keniston. And then you have your automotive at the back. We've provided you with, as good as we can, an indication of what automotive repair shops, collision centers, et cetera, are paying in the marketplace. So that's essentially what your structure is. You can't say, well, the whole thing's retail. It's not, it never will be. So what's a fair way to divide it? Look at the showroom, apply a rent, look at the service area, apply a rent. That's what we've done. We've provided the market data to support that, and the theory behind valuation of these facilities is such that it would follow in line with this. That's my summation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I very much appreciate your patience. I know it takes forever to get through this.
And this hearing is now closed.
Thank you.